Musical Talk, the UK's independent musical theatre podcast. Hello and welcome to Musical Talk. I'm Thos, a man so unique that even my double doesn't look like me. Well, welcome to this edition of Musical Talk, and I was thinking only recently how foolish so many people are. Now, usually I don't need a reason for this, but on this occasion, this was as a direct result of somebody I know saying those words which we'll have all heard at some stage of our lives, "Oh, I don't like musical theatre." And I thought to myself, but it's such a large genre. How can you possibly make such a damning statement about all of it? Because it covers so much. And as you know, as a regular listener, and I hope you're a regular listener, and if you're not, you really ought to start becoming one, of Musical Talk, all our presenters have totally different interests within the wider sphere of musical theatre. My taste is slightly more classic, brackets, old, close brackets, whereas other people prefer the spectacular, or dance routines, or music, or lyrics. There's so much to enjoy, so many different eras, so many different styles, so many people alive or dead who have done something in musical theatre in whom you can be interested. So to damn it all in one go, I think, is a rather foolish thing. But by extension, I suppose, you can take it the other way and say that for those of us who love musical theatre in all of its infinite variety, or indeed many of the paths, you will still find that two people, even with similar interests, will have massively different experiences of going to see shows. And that's proven every year, I think, marvellously by Nick Hudson, who of course oversees his grandiose reviews of the year on an annual basis, as you might expect. In fact, so popular are those, he does them 2 or 3 times with different people in order to reduce his own workload. I'm merely joshing, but the most important thing about that is that when he talks to one person about the shows they'd seen in a year, you get a totally different experience to when he speaks to somebody else. Now, spring is a very odd time to be doing a review of the previous year's shows, so I'm not going to do that. That would be foolish. However, just having a conversation with somebody who's been to see lots of shows in the last 12 to 16 months always bears fruit, I think. And that's true again on this occasion because, as I've slowly worked up to where we're going with this week's episode, I had a lovely conversation with David Kingsmill, one of our newer Musical Talk presenters, about some of the shows he's seen. And my word, what a lot he's been to. So over the next 2 weeks, you'll hear this very in-depth conversation where we cover all manner of shows, both in Britain and in America on Broadway, as he has been to both. And even when the shows are ones that you know, you might be surprised at a new opinion or a new thought or a new experience. So please join me on this roller coaster, extensive but absorbing conversation with David Kingsmill as we go through A Love Story, Betty Blue Eyes, Legally Blonde, Wicked, Lend Me a Tenner, The Umbrellas of Cherbourg, Salad Days, The Importance of Being Earnest. Musical Talk. David, fantastic to see you again.
Likewise.
We're going to have a bit of an interesting chat, I hope, although that's very much in the ball is in your court. It's just going to be, if you like, sort of your sort of personal journeys through the musicals that you stumbled across in the last year or so.
Yes.
So it's not really a review, but it's a kind of, what does one man see in his musical year, and what was good about it, and of course, by contrast, what was perhaps less good, if anything could be said to be less good about musical theatre. So we're not going to take these in any particular order. I'm just curious to know, you're into musical theatre, You're in musical theatre, you've performed in musical theatre, I'm thinking here of Hitler in Edinburgh, you've been musical director and Guys and Dolls and many other things, so you see musical theatre from all angles, from all sides of a stage, from all sides of a piano, although obviously facing the keys is easier.
Sometimes.
Yes, unless you're playing from the inside.
Well, yes.
So I'm curious to take your take on, what anyone could have seen in the last years. My first question then actually is, what it's a silly question, it's a difficult question, which is why I'm starting with it.
I know what's coming.
What was the best thing last year?
Yes, I thought it might be.
Or best and best. What's the thing that's stuck in your mind?
Oh, now that's an interesting one.
Which one, if you could see again now, would you go and see?
I think I won't say which one. I will say which two.
Oh. Double your money.
I'd like to say which three, but I won't. I'll keep it to two. Because I think that what last year really demonstrated was it demonstrated a lot of musicals which did not live the time that they should have lived. It showed a lot of shows that were really, really powerful, really, really evocative, really, really funny, really, really accomplished, disappear far too quickly, in my opinion.
Yes, the musical Grim Reaper really got his roller skates on last year.
Oh, most definitely. And I think that if you were going to... as I say, I won't do one, I'll do two. To narrow myself down to two, I would have said Love Story and Betty Blue Eyes.
Ah, right, okay.
I think were two spectacular musicals, neither of which got its time.
Now, why then? Let's talk about each one first, and then we can actually perhaps think why that might be. So, Love Story. Tell us about that.
I suspect most people will know the story of Love Story, having at one
I
point
Love
or another
might be involved in it.
Well, indeed, and having at one point or another seen the film, I'm sure. But it tells the story of a young preppy going into an American college who falls for a girl that he meets, who gradually, kind of playing hard to get, gradually realises that she's falling for him as well, and they form this relationship and eventually get married. But all this plays out. She discovers that she is terminally ill and is going to die. And so you have this extraordinarily powerful story because you have a romance that is certain to end, but for an absolutely devastating reason. Well, I suspect most romances' ending would be devastating, but...
It's La Traviata.
Basically. Yeah. It's told extremely well in Howard Goodall's musical. I have a great deal of respect for Howard Goodall's composing. I think he does a lot of interesting stuff with what he writes. And he wrote an extraordinarily powerful score for this. And the lyrics are by Howard Goodall and Stephen Clark. The book also written by Stephen Clark. And... yeah, I think just the way that he worked with this, the way that he orchestrated this, piano and strings, extremely effective combination. I think it creates a very particular sound. I don't know whether or not this is fair to say, but certainly for me, I think stereotypically it creates a very British sound.
Oh, now why?
It evokes completely the wrong sense for the kind of music that Howard Goodall has written, but there's something very English country garden about piano and strings. It seems to me to be a very identifiable sound. Of course, you know, there's composers all over the world who work with exactly the same instrumentation, but in the particular balance that Goodall uses for this, it gives it this interesting cross balance, because obviously he's written in slightly American styles to fit in with the fact that it is an American musical, and yet he has put his stamp on it as a British composer.
You see, when you say piano and strings to me, I think of a small British chamber quartet or something, a palm court orchestra or a palm court quartet, and nothing says Britain more than that, so perhaps you're right.
It gives that feel.
Yeah.
It feels a bit fuller than something like that. I must admit, I can't remember precisely how many instruments he had. And as we speak, I'm furiously looking to see if I can find the orchestration on the internet. But I just thought that it really offset the story and what he used to play with people's emotions. The instrumentation that he used really worked with that. And that was a coup de grace for me in what was already a very, very strong story. And the music's beautiful. I absolutely adore the music. I went to see this twice. I saw it once, if memory serves, just at the end of 2010. And then again just before it closed in 2011.
And where was it?
It was at the Duchess. Which, I mean, I haven't personally seen an awful lot at the Duchess, but it strikes me that there's a lot of stuff that goes there and doesn't live particularly long.
Yes.
Which, funnily enough, feels to me to have a similar effect as the Novello, which is where Betty Blue Eyes was on.
And had the same story.
And had exactly the same story,
in terms of its own lasting or not.
Yeah, and it will be interesting to see what happens to Mamma Mia once it inhabits that theatre. Will the same thing happen to it? Or will a show that already has a pedigree and many, many years, I don't know exactly how many, but many years of having run at the Prince of Wales, will it survive at the theatre that, for whatever reason, seems to end up strangling small productions?
Well, it's an intimate theatre, isn't it, the Duchess? I seem to remember seeing...
The Duchess is, yes. I don't remember... It's a pity I don't have my London Theatre Guide with me, or I'd tell you how many it seats. But it's not a massive theatre by any means. But, again, perfect for Love Story.
So why did it fail, then, in your view?
Well, this was something I actually asked to those listeners who've heard my interview with Peter Policarpou. He said he doesn't think it found its audience, and I think that he's kind of hit the nail on the head, really. It didn't find its audience. It tried very hard. It did a very, very good job of presenting itself, but the right people have to see it for it to actually live on. And clearly, sufficient number of the right people didn't see it.
And who were the right people? Because you talk about the emotion very strongly.
Yes.
I mean, we're not talking busloads of hen night parties coming in from the home counties.
I think that more and more musical theatre is coming to be dominated by the few big shows. You've got Wicked, Les Mis, Phantom, Mamma Mia, Jersey Boys, We Will Rock You, Billy Elliot.
The ones who were in for years.
The ones who were in for years. And most of those share something relatively common, which is a very big sound. I haven't seen all of those myself. I haven't seen Mamma Mia. I'm ashamed to admit I haven't yet seen Billy Elliot, and I must make a point of doing so.
But they have big sound, I have.
But fair enough. But all of the others I have seen, and they have this big sound, and what you don't get from Love Story is you don't get blasted out of the theatre, because that's not what is meant to happen. It's a very serious story. It's very powerful and affecting. You can't help but smile. There's a delightful song in the middle of it where they actually cook pasta on stage and sing about all the different kinds of pasta that they're going to make and how it fuels their day and their relationship.
It's called Ragu Time. It is not called Ragu Time.
No, I think it's called the Pasta Song, if I'm not mistaken.
Intrigued.
And it's a delightful piece of music, and you come out the other end of that grinning, laughing, particularly because they were genuinely cooking on stage.
Yeah.
Things went wrong. Both of the performances I saw had clean cookery sessions, but apparently, particularly at the beginning, they were not flawless. Which is the delight of live theatre.
It's like a pantomime slosh scene, by the way you're describing it.
Well, no, it's
not intending to be.
Yes, quite. No, it was extremely well done. Certainly, both of the. I'm only going on hearsay. Both of the performances that I saw seemed to me to be very slick, and to actually cook pasta on stage while singing. Not a massively complicated song, but Goodall doesn't write the easiest music in the world. It's probably one of the... I don't know, I haven't seen the full score, but I would hazard a guess, having not listened to it for a while, it's probably one of the easier songs in the show in terms of the musical complexity, although it sounds very... it's the way it's presented, it's quite quick, and it's got quite an involved accompaniment. But it's, even so, multitasking with something complicated when you're trying to sing speaking as an actor is not something simple.
It's more than just acting then, isn't it? Because
very
you're
much.
Actually it's a practical prop.
Well, it's choreography.
Yes.
What you're doing is you're doing choreography, but you're doing choreography, as you say, with a practical prop. And in this case, one that's on fire.
Yes.
And involving boiling water and food.
You can see where this could go horribly wrong.
Yes. But you come out of that song grinning from ear to ear like a Cheshire Cat, because it's this wonderfully funny piece. But that's not the overall feel.
No.
I think one of the things with this musical is that by its very nature, not in terms of entertainment, by which I mean the quality of the performance and what you're actually there to see and how much you enjoy being moved, but in terms of the happiness level of the performance, this starts up and goes down. And I think that probably doesn't appeal to everybody.
No, it's quite a difficult thing to sell, particularly in these difficult times. I think people are looking for more either reassuring stories or fantasy stories.
Yes, I think that's very true.
Out of the grim reality of life. Not giving that up, but looking then at the parallels, which seem immediately apparent to me with Betty Blue Eyes, your other favourite. Both based on films.
Yes.
Both feature food, then. Well,
they do.
I mean, Betty Blue Eyes is entirely driven by the need to find food.
It is.
In a Britain full of rationing.
There is even a song, actually, in Betty Blue Eyes, which is all about the wartime tradition of painting meat green, which they used to do to show that it was unfit for human consumption.
The condemned food, yeah.
Yes.
Actually, I think that's the least successful song in the whole piece, funny enough.
I absolutely agree. I think it made me laugh, and I thought it was a fun song. But I felt that it was out of character with the musical. Yeah. It just jarred. I loved it, but I felt like it took me out of the moment. It was a bit too surreal.
Yeah. It was the food inspector sort of saying he would have been a painter in real life.
Yes.
If he wasn't doing this miserable thing.
Yes, absolutely.
And taking just a bit too much glee and destroying food in a time of rationing. So, without any compunction on his own part, he was just painted as a petty bureaucrat, I thought. So what was good about Betty Blue Eyes and what was less good? Or why did it fail, perhaps?
Well, I think there's perhaps addressing those in reverse order. One of the reasons why it failed, and I've discussed this with a few of my friends who enjoyed it, and general agreement, I think, is that it didn't make enough of the fact that it was based on a private function.
Yes, a lot of people didn't realise.
No, it was on all the posters. Well, I don't know about all of them, but it was certainly on the bigger ones. But you had to look quite hard to see it. It wasn't one of the first things that hit you. And when you're playing on something that's been a very successful film, surely one of the things to do would be to absolutely bludgeon people round the head with the fact that this film is the source material.
Yeah.
And they didn't do that.
Which is odd, because George Stiles always says a show has to sell itself in its title.
Yeah, well, it did strike me that it was... Sorry, I'm going to stop there. I think there's a double argument there, because I think Betty Blue Eyes is a fantastic title, and I think that it's
for a new show.
For a new show, it gives you a wonderful question of what's this show about, which to an extent was answered by the posters because there was a massive pig in all of them. But it didn't sell the fact that it was anything to do with a private function.
Yeah. And why would a pig in itself be interesting?
Quite so.
Unless you're doing Babe the musical.
Well, this is true. Although actually, once you did see Betty Blue Eyes, the pig was adorable.
No, this is where we must disagree. I'm not in any way... the anthropomorphic pleasure of seeing animals is when they're in a cooking pot, and no other, as far as I'm concerned. I don't buy any of this, and indeed, I'm going to say that one of the things that I thought undercut the strength of the piece was the fact that the pig bloody well survives. As it doesn't in the film. They should have eaten it all right.
That I am inclined to agree with you on, although I must admit I did find it rather cute. Sorry. But, yeah, as you say, why would you go and see a show about a pig? Despite the fact that the pig is central to a lot of the story.
Yes, well, it's not the pig, it's the what the pig represents.
Exactly. That, and therein, I think, lies problem two. Was that you needed to understand the fact that this show was about the underlying metaphors of what was actually on the surface. And they were all fed to you during the show.
As it were.
Quite. But you needed to really appreciate them.
Yeah.
And I think there again, there's a show that's looking for its audience, and its audience needs to want to look below the surface. Because if you stare at that on the surface, what are you watching?
Yeah, it's a fairly odd show, really.
It's a very odd show.
I would say that its score is wonderful. With the exception of the song we've already discussed, I actually think it's one of the strongest scores I've heard in London for a while, because it was accessible.
Yes.
Whilst being interesting.
Extremely.
I have to say, I do think Anthony Drew is a marvellous lyricist.
Yes.
And George really can turn a tune, which is light and he's still a master of melody.
Yeah.
Which is not as common or as popular as it used to be in some senses. So I thought the score was excellent. For me, I actually really didn't like the tone or the feel of the piece, because I thought that I thought it failed when it was trying to be too slavishly like the film. Funnily enough, Rhys Shearsmith as the everyman Michael Palin character. I didn't buy into him, unfortunately. I didn't find it subtle enough to be a real character. And his snobbish wife, all you were getting was a cheap person's Maggie Smith. Literally, in fact. So.
Well, I think what's interesting is that the entire show, whilst we have condemned the painting song because it was too surreal...
We painted it in green paint, in fact.
We did. The entire show had a sense of surrealism about it. I think.
Yeah, or at least something silly.
Yes. The fact that there was the section where dinner suddenly became evening dress, and when it was in a conventional, not well-off people's household.
Yes.
The fact that the three guys who are hiding this pig keep breaking into three-part barbershop harmonies or close harmony. And so it doesn't do all the time what you expect it to do, and therein lies both again a strength and a weakness. I think there's a lot of people have an expectation when they go into theatre of what's going to happen, and if that is defied by the choices the actors make, or the choices the composers make when they write it, or the choices the director makes when they direct it, whatever it happens to be, then you run into difficulties nowadays because people are looking for something that's more accessible. Now, I completely agree with you. There are spectacular lyrics. It's a very accessible score. But one of the things that Stiles and Drew have a tendency to do, I think, is ask questions of their audience. They don't give you the answer. They ask you the question and encourage you to find it out from what they've written.
Treat you as an adult?
Absolutely.
In musical theatre?
Indeed they do.
That'll never catch on.
Well, for myself, I love that. And if somebody poses a question to me, I will dig at it until I find what I want to, what's bothering me, what's mystifying me, whatever it is they've laid in front of me. I think that a lot of people nowadays don't do that. They want to go in and have Defying Gravity slapped in their face because that's what Elphaba's trying to do at that point in time. Now, don't get me wrong, I adore Wicked as well. But, they're two very different types of show. Yeah. Wicked gives you the answers, Betty Blue Eyes gives you the questions.
Yeah, one is more of a narrative show, where the other one expects you to do, as you say, to join the dots rather than be led through them. Yes, that's a very interesting point. So that's, if you like, Sunday in the Pork with George and Anne's. I spent a long time thinking about that.
Oh dear.
And more recently, you've just seen, just to carry on with this idea of, might as well see if we can spot some trends, musicals which are based on films. You've just been to see Legally Blonde.
I have, indeed.
In its sort of last gasp.
Yes, not more than, in fact, less than a week ago as we speak.
Yeah. And it departs for London stage very shortly.
In under a month, I believe it's at the end of the first week of April. Something like the 6th or the 7th, I believe. Yes, it does. Now, this was an interesting one because I knew the music from it. I have a copy of the I want to say the Broadway soundtrack because I know the Broadway and the London soundtracks for this are different. Now, I do have a recording of this. I have listened to that recording a few times. In actual fact, when I did my final concert at Trinity, when I left as an MD, one of the group numbers in fact, the number I opened the show with was "Oh My God, You Guys," the first number from the show.
The one I find really difficult to listen to. It sounds like someone running amok in an abattoir with a chainsaw. To me, it's just.
That's a marvellous description.
All I can hear is a high-pitched screaming, and I really thought I was going to hate the rest of the show. But after that song, I suddenly realised it was actually quite a good show going on. That first number, I just went. It wasn't just the singers who were shouting,
"No.
Oh my God, you guys!"
Yeah, they do try extremely hard in that first song to absolutely point out the kind of girl that Elle is meant to be.
Yes.
And that she's stereotyped as being, and they use every implement of war to ram that home. I quite understand where you're coming from with that. I have a certain partial sort of side of me that likes that, but I think that's as much because I did it for my show, and it's just it was fun.
For those people who want to spot, by the way, a parallel, it's not a million miles away from Telephone Hour in Bye Bye Birdie, 40 years previous.
Now, I haven't actually heard Bye Bye Birdie. Yes, I do. I own a copy of the soundtrack, but I haven't got around to listening to it yet, which is terrible of me.
It's a marvellous Charles Strauss score.
Slap my hand.
But it's about what teenagers do.
Right.
And in a sense, so is this.
Yes, very much so.
It's a contextualising piece, yes.
Yeah, and so Legally Blonde follows what I believe is the story of the first film. I haven't seen it myself. But it follows Elle as she decides to go to, is it Harvard or Yale?
A law school.
Harvard. Yes, it's Harvard Law School. Wow, how did I get that wrong? Because she's in love with a guy who's left her to find somebody more serious because he wants to be more serious, and so she crams up and gets into Harvard, and it's about her exploits there. Now, I thought this was a very interesting score. I actually think that a lot of the songs in it are rather good. They are accessible. There is nothing complicated about what's presented to you. It just gets.
It is a narrative
It's laid very squarely on the table. Yes. It has all the subtlety of Wicked, I would say. Yeah. No, that's not fair, actually. I think Wicked is more subtle.
It couldn't be less subtle.
Well, but it couldn't. Legally Blonde really does just lay its cards flat out, without question. And even if it does grate a little bit, I think it succeeds because of that. I think that's part of the reason that it's done as well as it has. Besides the fact that it's got an awful lot of pink, an awful lot of girls, and an extraordinarily cute dog.
Here we go with your animal. That was a real one on this occasion.
That wasn't it? Well, two, in fact.
Yes. Once again, that's one of my complaints about the wretched thing. I'm sitting there, stony-hearted, was suddenly, you've got action going on, but the story's developing. You've had a song or two, and then suddenly
a chihuahua in a pink hoodie.
Suddenly, the heroine wanders on with two dogs, and the entire British audience just goes, except for me, and all I want to do is release poison nerve gas. I may take myself out, which will be a blessed relief. But if I can free the world of the imbecility of it all, I will have done us all a favour.
I'm quite glad I didn't go with you because I quite like living, and I must admit I was one of the general public who went, sorry. But yeah, I enjoyed Legally Blonde. I think I both do know and don't know why it's closing.
Now, you may wish to expand on that little statement.
Well, I think, it's a show that it's very in your face.
Yeah.
I know there are people who go back and see it several times, but it's not going to be to everybody. Now, where I will see Wicked several times, in fact, I think I've seen it 7 times today.
Today?
To date.
Oh,
no, much as I'd like to try and 7 in one day. And I think the poor singers would give up the ghost if you did that. But
a different musical again, that is.
Well, yes, and that I haven't seen. But yeah, it's the kind of thing that I don't think everybody would go back, and I wouldn't go back probably and see League. Well, maybe I would if there was somebody in it I wanted to see. And I know that my other half saw it several times at one point in time, but mostly because there was somebody in it that she wanted to go and see.
Interesting.
Once you've seen Legally Blonde, you've seen Legally Blonde.
Yes, you have, and I agree with that absolutely.
Sorry.
No, I was merely going to say that it's worth seeing once, but only once, in my view.
Yeah, I mean, I have only seen it once, and therefore I cannot justify my next comment, or I certainly can't back it up. But I think it's the kind of thing where it would be very difficult to see a second performance and see it different.
Yeah.
I think it would be very much now.
It'd be like watching the video again or the DVD again.
Yeah. Now people may say that the same can be said of Wicked in the sense of they still have to hit positions, they still have to be in certain parts of the stage at certain points. But thinking back to the first time I saw Wicked, which was back in 2009, I think, when Kerry Ellis was in it. I remember thinking at the time that yes, this was a big show, but that there were different ways of doing what was done. Now that I'd be very narrow-minded if I was saying that there weren't different ways of doing what's done in Legally Blonde, but I think there are fewer.
Yeah.
I think it's
fewer changes to ring.
Yeah, I mean Elphaba. I've seen 2 Elphabas in my time, which was Kerry Ellis and Rachel Tucker. I'm not sure how many Glindas I've seen in my time. I think it's 4. They all, to a certain extent, do similar things because they have to.
Yeah.
But I've noticed differences in the performance because Elphaba as a character can be an extremely sort of almost canny character.
Yeah.
She can also be a young schoolgirl. She can be played, and I'm not necessarily saying these are the portrayals I've seen, but there are immediately ways that you can also see a slightly more mature performance.
Because the text is written in such a way that you can do that.
Yeah, whereas Elle has to be a particular type of girl at the beginning of the show.
And that age as well.
Yeah, because you have to set up the stereotype, and she is a stereotype. Whereas Elphaba, she's not. She's a stereotype in the sense of she's a character who is hard done by her parents and has to look after the less physically able but more successful and popular sister. But she's got more to her than that.
But Legally Blonde is actually in the title. She is, it is about confounding the expectations of the stereotype. So you have to set up the stereotype in order to rip them away.
Yeah.
Whereas, as you say, the story of Wicked, the prequel to The Wizard of Oz, is the fact it's how did the characters get to where they were. So they're about characters rather than stereotypes.
Well,
I think I agree with you.
Exactly. Elphaba is a stereotype in the sense she's an outcast.
Yeah.
Elle is a stereotype.
But there are lots of different kinds of outcasts available.
Just so.
Yes.
Elle is a stereotype in the sense that she has to be a attractive, blonde, ditzy bimbo.
Yeah.
And you have, you're every time you say a word in that, you're narrowing down who she can be more and more.
Yeah. I agree with that. Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. What I don't understand about why Legally Blonde's closing, to come back to that question, is the fact that it is as successful as it is. And it's not I say I don't understand it. Of course I understand why that's happening. But, it's a show that I would have thought could run longer, even though I understand why it's not.
It was sold a little bit as a star vehicle in this country, though.
Yes.
And Sheridan Smith has left.
Which is also quite possibly something to do with it.
So I'm not saying that is the only reason, but
no.
One can't help but wonder.
Well, this is very true. And when you take out... When people are going to see... If you're going to see a musical because the main character is somebody you want to see, and that's how the musical is launched,
yes,
you immediately put a shelf life on.
Yeah.
And the question is, can the shelf life be extended by the next person? And
or can the show itself be its own star?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many L's they've had over time, but somewhere down the line, the shelf life hasn't managed to extend.
The L bells, you mean?
Yes, quite. But will be interesting. They've got this. They've got the Sunshine Boys, Neil Simon's Sunshine Boys, coming in with Danny DeVito and Richard Griffiths. It will be very interesting to see. That's obviously going to be a very different show.
Oh, jolly well hope so.
You were quite.
Oh my God, you guys!
So bring that on, and let's see what takes over, and maybe that's going to be, the next success in some way.
Perhaps,
time will tell.
Yes, although that already says to me that's a star vehicle. I think people will go to see that to see Danny DeVito, and if they're sensible, Richard Griffiths.
Well, yes, quite. And that's the end of April, I think, or early May that opens. So we'll see what happens.
Musical talk. So we've discussed 3 films, 2 of which you've identified as right up there amongst films musicals that you particularly liked.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to offer you now a random option. You can pick any one from the year that you've seen that you sort of fancy having a chat about.
Oh, I tell you what I do think, and this is coming back to the same theme of musicals that close too soon. Lend me a tenner.
That was a Summer Gap film, though, wasn't it?
That was a Summer Gap film.
Wasn't it actually popped into Betty Blue Eyes because Betty Blue Eyes finished early? Am I right about that?
No, it was at the Gielgud, if memory serves.
Oh, was it taking over from...
It was indeed at the Gielgud.
It was taking over from The Umbrellas of Cherbourg.
Yes, I believe it did.
Which was my favourite show of the year, and the one that I thought died too soon last
year.
Right,
which I didn't see.
And based on a film.
Yes, and I was kind of partly turned off seeing that because I love the film, and I wasn't sure how it translated, which wouldn't normally stop me. What did stop me was the fact that it was being sung in English.
Oh, that's the reason I went.
Fair enough. I just thought it sang so well in French in the film.
Do you speak French?
I don't, no.
Oh.
And so I sat there with the subtitles on, but there was something about the sound of it, and one of the things that really appeals to me about that is the sound of the film, and I didn't want that to be ruined. And of course, by the time I decided, actually, hang on, let's just go and see this, too late.
You missed your chance.
Yeah.
Let me put it this way. For me, that's the big regret. I would adore them to bring out a CD or a DVD because... And it was filmed.
Was it?
Yes, but whether it'll ever be released is not.
Well, that's true. I mean, Lord of the Rings was filmed, and that's never come out. There's There's another one somebody was telling me about. All these little short-run shows that get filmed, and the DVDs never surface.
It's a great pity.
Particularly and the reason I quote Lord of the Rings is because you saw it on their website. They gave you clips of full songs that were professionally filmed. I saw that at the time, and so they've obviously got a complete professional DVD of it somewhere. Who knows where? But anyway, jumping back to Lend Me a Tenner, I loved it. I thought this was a fantastic show. I really enjoyed it. One thing that really stood out for me beyond all else was I thought it had the most spectacular farce sequence in it I've ever seen.
Oh, really?
I'm not a farce fan.
Are you not?
No. Which, bearing in mind that my grandfather was, who I grew up with, and I never took the taste. And I see the odd bits of farce that I quite enjoy. This had me falling off my seat. It was so funny. It was brilliantly done. You had 3 people dressed up as the same person, dashing in and out of cupboards, doors, corridors, whatever else it happened to be.
Farce, yeah.
Absolute proper Whitehall farce. And it was so smoothly done. Farce beyond compare as far as I was concerned. But that aside, great score, clever show.
And here's a question then. How does farce and a musical marry together? Because I can only think of one famous successful option, which is a funny thing that happened on the way to the forum.
Mm-hmm.
And even when they're doing the farce part, at the end, where one is running around dressed as the dead bride,
yeah.
The music very much takes a second place at that moment.
Yes. Now, maybe the music does take second place, perhaps on the grounds that... I haven't got a recording of Lend Me a Tenner, I will say, before I say this. I don't remember the music from that section, and given that I loved it so much, I would perhaps expect myself to. And so maybe it does say something, the fact that I didn't.
It suddenly becomes incidental music rather than a piece in its own right, almost.
Yes, possibly. But it served it obviously served well because the sequence wouldn't work if what was going on underneath it didn't match. And so that was, obviously it was a great success. But that's just one section of it. The whole show was enjoyable, and I came away from it feeling, elated and happy and thinking, because I think I did go and see it after it had posted. And I remember thinking, well, why is this going anywhere? I think it may have, it was probably a filler, but I can't remember what followed it. But I think it was stuck between two things, and I think it's a travesty that it didn't get to do more or maybe move somewhere else. Because, there are, I'm not going to lie, there are shows on at the moment in London that I think should close.
Yes,
and that you get stuff like that pops up and vanishes and doesn't have a chance to be reinvigorated because there's nowhere for it to go.
I think timings are so important. I really do. I mean, you're right, because that to me that felt like the summer filler.
Yes.
If funnily enough, I suspect if I'd thought it was booking for a year, I probably would have gone to see it. But because I thought it was only in London for 3 months, in my head it took on the role of summer filler,
right,
and last-minute replacement for Umbrellas, which had been expected to run. They closed early.
Yes, they did.
So that's probably in my head. And I thought, well, they've just shipped something in from Chichester or something like that.
Quite understandable.
Which will do, but isn't enough. And yet, ironically, it probably was one of the better things on, although I didn't see it. So it's interesting that you're, being so
you
positive.
do, though. I mean, I've missed stuff over time that I wish I'd gone to see. The other show that, talking of shows that didn't hit their audience, the other show that Peter Bolagabu used that particular description of, which was Imagine This.
Yes.
Which
from 2 or 3 years ago now.
Yes, I 2008 possibly. But I listened to the wrong people when that was out, didn't go and see it, and I believe it was a rather good show.
And that's what everyone did, unfortunately. I have a feeling that the reviewers helped do for that.
Well, how to strangle a show.
Yeah.
If too many people listen to the critics and the critics decide they don't like it for some reason, the same thing happened to Lord of the Rings, for better or for worse. Now, I quite enjoyed that show, where a lot of people I know didn't.
I shall hold my peace on this one.
Fair enough. But it was...
But Umbrella's
that got strangled.
Yeah.
Umbrella's got strangled. There's several. If the wrong people say the wrong thing at the wrong time, that show doesn't stand a chance.
So, Lend Me a Tenner, we'll just much touch on the fact that it's by...
Book and lyrics by Peter Sham, music by Brad Carroll. And it came up from Plymouth. Theatre Royal Plymouth it ran.
Oh, right.
So that's where it got dragged in from. But yes, it ran a very... Well, in fact, I've got the dates in front of me. It opened on the 15th of June and closed on the 6th of August, so it didn't even have a month.
Crikey. So you had to catch it if you could.
You really did, and I think I was quite lucky to get a ticket. I can't remember exactly how I got the tickets for that particular one, but I'm very glad I did.
Because then you went immediately up to Edinburgh, of course.
Well, quite.
So that's Lend Me a Tenner.
Yep.
What else can you pull out of your sort of rag bag of experiences last year?
Well, I mean, I saw so many different things, and went to a lot of venues I hadn't been to before. Salad Days at the Riverside. I'd not gone to and actually I was delighted to see Salad Days. That's one of the earliest soundtracks I've ever been given, which Was
it the 77 version with Sheila Steeple, by any chance? The yellow-covered one?
No, it was a green-covered tape.
I think that might be the original.
No, I don't think it was, because I found the original in Trinity's library and it wasn't. I don't remember who it was. Unfortunately, I've lost the tape and I can't find the recording again. But I thought it was a delightful show when I used to listen to it. I never understood a word of it, of course, because it's all out of date.
I'm closer to it than you are, but yes.
It was for somebody who, of course I understood it as I grew up, but for some, I was given that when I was about 6. Well, no, out of date's the wrong term. It's a different world. The concept of a Don,
yes.
For example, which does still exist, I think, but the concept of a Don didn't make sense to me. I didn't know what a Don was. I just assumed he was somebody who had a bit of freedom, because that's how the musical portrayed them.
This is an academic Don and not a mafia Don, of course. We ought to say
absolutely.
For absolute clarity.
So it was great to see something from that period that was revived spectacularly. Extremely musically capable. In fact, I think the entire band just had copies of the piano vocal score and they improvised from it every night, which I think is an extraordinary thing to do. I also knew a couple of the cast in Sam Harrison, who played the lead, and Rebecca Kane, and so I sort of, fortunately because of them, I heard about it and went to see it, and I was delighted to it. It was a wonderful, wonderful production done in Traverse at Riverside Studios, and I really enjoyed that.
We should just say also that Riverside is becoming one of those little hothouses of fringe musicals anyway, because they've also just done The Importance of Being Earnest with Giles Brandreth as Lady Bracknell.
Yes.
And the marvellous Edward Petherbridge.
And has that finished now?
It's finished, but there's talk of it coming back to London later in the year.
I really hope it does, because for one, I'd like to see Giles Brandreth on stage, because he's rather fun. And for two, I'd love to see the show. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see that one,
nor did
as
I.
is obvious from those comments. But no, it would be fun to go and have a look. And I think that Riverside's a really nice little venue.
It's also a great place to try things out, because it's a lovely, as you say, it's little and intimate, and you can see. I wonder if Betty Blue Eyes had started there, developed a bit of a reputation for being good in a small and intimate venue.
Now that's an interesting one.
Would it have, would a transfer from London to London have done it better than straight in and then rely on the Evening Standard telling everybody but it was marvellous on a day-by-day basis, which it did?
Yes.
You can't say that Standard doesn't support theatre.
No, that's very true. It is an interesting question, and who's to say? I think that's as much as timing is important, placement is important, and you do need to make sure that you get the right theatre for your show. Whatever that happens to be. And speaking of right theatres for shows, jumping back to 2012 for a moment, Children of Eden. The concert of Children of Eden put on in the Prince of Wales Theatre, which, thanks to what's running there at the moment, is the only time I've ever been in the Prince of Wales Theatre. But what a spectacular venue for that concert. It really suited it.
Really?
Big space, massive sort of stage. The way it was done for a concert, it felt like there was a lot going on, even though there probably wasn't necessarily.
Semi-stage, but
semi-stage, yes. But I thought that venue was perfect for that concert, whereas if you tried to put it somewhere a little bit smaller, it would have fallen flat on its face, I suspect, because it would have overwhelmed the venue. But the Prince of Wales was ideal for that. And, there is a lot to be said for that. The Woman in Black. Okay, we're talking about a play here, but the Fortune Theatre is perfect for that because it's so intimate. I've seen that once, and actually at the time, thanks to financial constraints, sat in the very back row of the balcony, and I still felt like I was sitting on top of the stage.
Yes, because of its intimacy.
Because it's now that I do know, the Fortune Theatre seats 440 people, so it's a tiny little space, and that's on 3 floors. So you really do feel, and so there is a lot to be said for spacing, and maybe with Betty Blue Eyes, maybe Riverside Studios would have been too small.
Possibly.
But putting it, maybe that would have been a nice place for its birth, and then it could have got bigger as it progressed on in stages.
Yeah. Well, as I say, I believe that Importance of Being Earnest sold out. So, as I say, if that's the case, and it comes back to London, there's a lesson there. Take the London Fringe first, if you can.
Yeah. Well, and while we're talking about great shows that ran for short times, Shoes the musical.
Now, when you say ran, these running shoes, presumably.
They were all kinds of shoes.
Now, tell me about Shoes, because I don't know anything about Shoes the musical.
Well, you do, because it's in the title. Shoes is a musical about shoes, and that is all the plot there is to it. They literally...
Sounds rather soulless to me.
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear.
I'm so sorry. Yeah. I could have said it was a pile of old cobblers.
Yeah. Well, they tied it all up very nicely. It was... Every song was either about well, I say that. It wasn't even either a mix or an individual type of shoe. There were also songs that had a longer life that ran for about 3 different types of shoes. But it was literally just stories about shoes.
Fantasy stories? Sort of children's stories, fairy stories, or
no, some of them quite adult stories.
The shoes were symbolic of couples, were they? Or
no, not particularly. It was literally just. Well, for example, there was a song in there which was a procedural. With the cast dressed as crash test dummies. It was a procedural on how to wear high heels. And it was literally a step-by-step guide, including such steps as put the heels on, stand up, fall over, crawl into the kitchen and make a cup of tea, and then try again.
So it's a British musical?
Good question. Yes, I think it must have been, because it started in Sadler's. It did a run in Sadler's Wells, I think, in 2010 for a month or something, and then did a month in the Peacock, which is where I saw it in 2011. But then, for example, that song was then immediately followed by a song which was basically saying the whole point of wearing high heels is to draw attention to your backside. And that was the whole purpose of the song. There was a rather brilliant, and there was, talking of theme, whether it's adults or children, there's quite a lot of swearing at points as well.
So this is a real concept musical?
Yes,
so it's
hugely.
Not a narrative, it is a series of shoe-based episodes, but it could it's almost as though someone said to a whole group of people, right, you've got 5 or 10 minutes to write a story about shoes, and anything will go in relation to this. Is that fair? I'm not saying that's how they did it. But
Yeah, kind of. I mean, the first...
Because real concept musicals are quite difficult to come get hold of.
Well,
there aren't that many around. A lot of things are gimmick musicals, but this is a concept musical.
It is. Well, the very first song in the show is called A Brief History of Shoes. And it's a history lesson. They talk about each period and what kind of shoe was there.
Oh, right. Okay.
And basically end the song ripping the hell out of Crocs, which seems perfectly fair to me. They had three or four, maybe even half a dozen, I can't remember exactly how many, interlude songs where it was just music, no words, and somebody would come on. There was somebody, for example, ballet dancing in diving flippers.
Oh.
Somebody came on wearing, I think it was crocodile skin cowboy boot type shoes. It was as much physical theatre and dance as it was singing, and you had
as well.
For the most, I think it was broadly divided into 4 singers and a cadre of dancers. And you'd have, some of them would be actual stories. There was one, for example, which was what happened to Cinderella further on down the line, where everything was going to pot, and that's an absolutely marvellous song. There were other ones that were about the shoe itself. There were others that were complete spoof. There's a wonderful song called If You Walk a Mile, which was the second song in the show, and the lyrics were, if you walk a mile in someone else's shoes, if you walk a mile in someone else's shoes, if you walk a mile, if you walk a mile, if you walk a mile in someone else's shoes, basically you're a thief. You're a thieving thief. That's it. That's the whole lyric of the song.
But the punchline is that it pulls you away from, because, it's the old statement, if you walk somewhere in someone else's shoes, you'll get to know who they are.
Yeah.
Whereas in fact it's actually, that's clever.
Yeah, and they play on everything to do with shoes.
Who wrote it?
So Shoes was, to quote the website, fresh from the pen of Richard Thomas, who was co-creator of Jerry Springer.
Yes.
And had the choreographer Stephen Mear. So I mean,
That's
no
lyricist there.
No, not listed. So not wanting to.
So it might be Richard Thomas doing it all, but
It quite possibly. So not wanting to tread on anyone's toes if they're not there, but it does look like it's Richard Thomas doing it all. And of course, as soon as you put Stephen Mear into something, you know the choreography is going to be good. And it was.
I think wrong, will you?
Well, no, quite. Well, I think the Telegraph said it all with a rather wonderful headline at the time, which was "The shoe must go on."
Yay, very good. Yeah, there's no business like shoe business.
Yeah, well, quite. But it was a wonderful show, and it was just one of those things where you grinned the entire way through it, simply because what was on stage was so unashamedly silly.
Yes.
You had the band even, where they had this massive kind of cylinder on the stage, and they had a long ramp which the singers would sort of walk up, and they'd end up standing. They'd go around the back of this cylinder and end up standing, I suppose, probably about 15 feet in the air and singing over the top. And inside this cylinder was where the band was housed, so you could see the band, but they were always kind of out of the way.
Oh, right.
And a little bit hidden. But at the same time, if they chose to have a bit of fun, you could, if you happened to be looking that way, you'd see it. And it was a wonderful show, and again one of the greats. I think from last year. I probably should have put that into my list at the beginning. But it was just so different. And there I think it succeeded, because it was something that, I hadn't seen on the West End before. I'm sure there are things like that, and I just haven't seen them. But this one was particularly good. And they made a very interesting comment, which was, at some point in one of the songs, they said that when you leave the theatre, you're going to be judging everybody else's shoes, and everybody else is going to be judging yours. And instinctively, you do.
Well, if you've been forced into looking at them for 2 hours, then shoes suddenly become
precisely so
the focal point of one's life.
Precisely so. And then I suppose, if we're talking about my last year, something that has to come up is Broadway.
Because you went?
I went to Broadway for the very first time, and had a fantastic time while I was out there. We managed to see. I was out there for 5 nights, if memory. No, 6 nights, and saw 6 musicals.
Oh right. I can see how you did that.
Yes, excellent. We would have seen 7, but we chose to go to a concert at Juilliard instead. So I saw a very eclectic mix there, because I think in vague order, if I remember rightly, we saw Spider-Man. Yes, we'll come back to that in a second. How to Succeed, which we have discussed in a previous episode, I think.
And no sign of it coming to London, and why not?
Exactly. Phantom, Anything Goes, Wonderland, and The Addams Family.
Well, got a right old mixture there. If you don't, you've got classics with How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying and Anything Goes.
Yep.
Plus the latest and the ones which will never come to London, like The Addams Family just won't.
No, it seems very, very unlikely. And that was a very interesting show because people I had a friend over there who we met while we were there who described the show as slow, which, bearing in mind that all the cast are dead, or most of half the cast are dead.
Were you allowed to corpse on stage?
I should say the characters, not the play for playing them. You're allowed to corpse on stage, dear Lord. Yes. Of course it's a slow musical, and if you embrace that that's part of what makes it, then I didn't find it slow. I mean, yes, it was slow in terms of a contemporary musical, but there was a purpose to it.
Yeah. I mean, if it's going to be, the problem with the Addams Family is if it's going to be true to the books by Charles Addams, this grotesque family, everything is, you're right, they live in this sort of dank, stately home, large mansion rather, really, and it's, they do spend their time slowly boiling up toads and newts in cauldrons, and, it's not as zany as the films.
No. Well, I felt, having not read the books, but it seemed to me like they kind of found a relatively happy medium between the two.
Oh, right, okay.
Because they did have, there's become quite a famous song that Wednesday sings called Pulled, where she's talking about the fact that she's falling in love with this guy, but at the same time she's torturing her cousin.
Yes.
So you've got this undertone, but it's funny. And it's overdone, and therefore it depends how you choose to look at it. If you look at it as a surface thing, then it's has the sense of the films, but at the same time, what they're actually doing is quite dark.
Why did it fail on Broadway, do you think?
I don't know.
It was very expensive.
Possibly the fact that it was a slow show, and if people didn't accept that it was likely to be the case, then you run into trouble. What I really don't understand is how it failed on Broadway when it had Nathan Lane in it, because on the recording I think he's absolutely fantastic. Now, I saw Roger Rees. Unfortunately, I think I was about a month late for Nathan Lane, which I always seem to be. I've never managed to see him on stage. But Roger Rees was also excellent. And knowing Nathan Lane's pedigree, I'm sure he was too. And so how the show has kind of died the death that it has when it's already dead, I don't really know. I really enjoyed it.
But the critics didn't take to it at all.
No, I don't believe they did. I haven't read any
and the American critics
actual critiques.
Are much. They seem to have more sway than ours. I'm pleased to say. Well, I'm not saying I'm pleased to say. I'm pleased to say ours don't have quite that
yes.
sway.
I mean, I don't really know what to say about the Addams Family because I just went along and had a good time. That was my last. That was the show. I left that evening, and I saw it on the matinee. So, I didn't perhaps. I was just wanting to have fun before I left, and I appreciate that I may not have. And I didn't go to most of Broadway with a critical eye. The two shows I really went into being critically were Spider-Man and Phantom. But for the Addams Family, I just wanted to go in and have a giggle, and that's exactly what I had.
So let's talk about Spider-Man and Phantom, the two that you actually wanted to review, so as you say, critically.
Yes.
Why did you want to look at those two?
Well, Phantom, I wanted to go and see a show that had transferred from here and see how it was done.
A compare and contrast job.
Yes, and I think what I would do the next time I go is go and see something like Wicked and see a show that has come here that I have seen and see the reverse. But I wanted to see how something was taken, and with no disrespect to anybody, it was the most disappointing show I saw on Broadway.
Oh, so exactly like the London one then?
No, you see, I like London, and I think Broadway was the seventh time. Well, I lost count actually. Either Broadway or the 25th anniversary concert, which I also went to. One of those two was the 7th time I've seen Phantom, so I've either seen it 7 or 8 times. I really like Phantom, and what disappointed me about the American production was it felt like they turned parts of it into a comedy. In particular, there is the section where they bring the ballet forward and perform the ballet early, and there is the white cyc gauze screen at the back. And you see the silhouette of the Phantom coming up with his noose, being threatening, and kind of, yes, it is a tiny bit silly because it's all shadow play and giant sort of shadows and that kind of stuff. It is. Yeah. But there was one point where, if I remember correctly, and I may have distorted my memory just because I was so shocked, but if I remember correctly, he was holding the noose up as if he was hanging from it and jumping up and down. Oh, right. And it broke the audience into giggles. And made me think, well, what the hell am I doing watching this show? Because this isn't what I came in to see. And it was a very, very... And I'm sure not everything that goes over does that. And I don't know, where that particular decision came from. But I was really disappointed with Phantom. Just because I felt like I hadn't seen Phantom. I felt like I'd seen somebody's slightly comedic take.
Yes.
And that was the one show I saw on Broadway where I walked out and I was disappointed. Which, bearing in mind the fact that you mentioned Spider-Man a moment ago, might surprise some people.
It's going to surprise me. So tell me about Spider-Man, described as the U2 musical. And I tell you why I'm particularly interested is because, funny enough, it's one of the very first shows that we discussed on Musical Talk when we started all those years ago.
Oh, really?
I remember having a very early discussion with Nick, so it must have been within the first 25 or 26 episodes. So it's probably late 2006, and it had just been announced in all the press. Everyone was saying, is this going to be marvellous or is it going to be rubbish? So you decide.
Well,
you've seen it.
It depends what you went to go and see. As a musical... how shall I put this? I don't feel it succeeded.
Oh, right, okay.
The U2 musical is an extremely good description. You walk in and you get U2, and very little else. There are two songs that I got a hold of the soundtrack. I put the soundtrack onto my iPod and I removed all but two songs from it. There are only two songs that I can really take listening to. There's a couple of there are one or two really nice songs in it, and there are a couple that are a bit more fun. But I get tired of this musical very fast indeed.
So it hasn't got legs?
It doesn't. It doesn't even have two, in my opinion, let alone eight. However, as a spectacle, it's one of the most incredible things I've ever seen. And I would say a similar thing of Lord of the Rings.
It's funny you should say that, because I didn't see Lord of the Rings, but everyone I know who went to see it saw it, including Musical Talk, said exactly the same thing.
Yeah, and
it doesn't
in fact,
need to be a musical. They might as well have just done it as a show, and it would have been much the better.
Yeah, it was actually, funnily enough, spotting Spider-Man on my list that I have with me when we were talking earlier, which is what made me think of Lord of the Rings as an example to give, because I had exactly the same opinion of that I do of this. A couple of really good songs, a couple that are rather fun, and the rest of them, for me, kind of fade into the background. Same thing with Spider-Man, except that Spider-Man was even more spectacular. I can entirely see why this production was as expensive as it was. I can entirely see why this production has resulted in the number of injuries that it has resulted in, because the wire work in this is something else completely. The stage... the auditorium, if this description makes any sense, there is a sort of little hemisphere of people at the very front, and then 3 blocks behind it. So if you therefore imagine the resultant aisle shape is a kind of curve with 2 lines that come down and meet it at either side of the top, if you like, which create little T-junctions. Now, Spider-Man will, at a couple of points, drops out of the air and just lands, losing very little speed from where the rate he's dropping, just lands in amongst the audience. The majority of the first half is based on the same story as the first film, the origin story of Spider-Man. And so therefore he ends up fighting the Green Goblin an awful lot. Whilst in mid-air, flying over the audience, at a couple of points he lands on the Green Goblin's back and jumps off again and springs away. Both of the circles in the theatre have, one on each side, have little platforms, and he will just suddenly land on this platform at the front of the circle, right in front of the audience. You may want to put a spoiler alert before this particular description, because I'm conscious that I'm giving away a lot of the kind of, at least the basis for the spectacle. But the movement and the wire choreography in this is something else entirely. And it really was brilliant. And the aesthetic design of it is really interesting as well, because they've stuck to comic book, but at the same time they've made it relatively realistic. So Spider-Man is always portrayed as being, this is going to sound slightly strange, a standard human shape.
Yeah.
Whereas there is a song called Pull the Trigger, which is one of the ones that I find rather fun, which happens in the middle of it, which involves the military kind of egging on Norman Osborn to become the Green Goblin. And the military at that point are dressed in these padded suits that expand their shoulders right out, give them big heads, put them all out of proportion. And
like
so
American
you have,
footballers. So yes, bizarrely they're no longer retaining...
Actually, kind of akin, but a bit more fantastical.
Yeah.
And so you have, and then the arch villains that come out all look different, and they all look kind of
mutated in a sense.
Yeah.
In a way that Spider-Man, who is in a way a mutant, isn't.
Yes, well, he's kind of mutated on the inside, if you like, because of what his abilities actually are, but he doesn't change his outward appearance apart from his costume. But so you do have this bizarre mix of, which is what his world is, of reality and surreality. You also have two guitarists on stage who play the whole way through, who rather do look like they're having fun, but I find rather distract. And they also have this little cadre of comic aficionados who are arguing about if I remember rightly, are arguing about what the Spider-Man origin story actually is. And that really detracts from the rest of the show.
And that's on the stage?
Yes.
So that's almost decontextualising what you're seeing?
Yes, it's almost, they stop the show, they bring these people out onto the stage and discuss the show and then send you back into it again. And that's exactly what it feels like it's doing. It's literally like the show stops for 2 minutes while they're on stage.
It's a showstopper, but the worst kind.
Yes. Now, I have to say these are all relating to last April. Now, I'm not sure if the show has changed. I have a feeling the show's changed quite a bit since then, based on what one of my friends said, but I may have misinterpreted them. So this may not be true now, but this is certainly my experience of it. I would recommend that people go and see it for the experience. I would not recommend that people go and see it if they're looking for a quality and in-depth musical, because that's not what you're going to get at all.
Musical talk. Children of Eden, Shoes the Musical, The Addams Family, Spider-Man, Phantom of the Opera. Oh, well, the list was so long, you seem to have caught up with me. That's hardly surprising. And don't forget, we're only halfway through this conversation, so do tune in again next week for the second half, and we'll be talking about a lot more shows, in fact, a larger number even than today. However, that wraps it up, I think, for the time being, so thanks very much for listening to Musical Talk. Do pop along to iTunes or the website to look at our episodes, and possibly more importantly, listen to them, because in an audio-only medium, looking at them is really quite a difficult thing to do, and frankly, not very fruitful, even if you take a snapshot of the waveform of the sound. And frankly, I don't recommend that you do. So, that's it for this week. So without further ado, and rather a lot of nothing, as they used to say on an old radio programme in the 1960s, I say goodbye and speak to you soon. Bye-bye. This episode of Musical Talk was presented by Thos and David Kingsmill and edited by Thos. The music was by David Kingsmill. The episode is copyright Musical Talk 2012. And now for some musical out talk. Get yourself into a comfy position, sir. We'll go for a level.
Okie doke. I think, something like that will do. So, probably therefore talking at something around this level, I would imagine, unless I get ridiculously excitable.
That's fine.
Excellent.
Actually, one of the advantages of this kind of ambient background, it actually makes it easy to edit, believe it or not.
Really?
Because you can't hear the clicks.
That's
Because there's
true.
always a background low-level hum. You can take words out and you don't hear the click, whereas if we were in a cleaner environment...
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
Very true.
Well, good start. I'll do a studio link, so I'll be then, because that's easy, I can do that at home, and that's it, right?
Absolutely. Oh, that's an interesting question. We'll do a cut there, and I will find out as we go along. In fact, let's just hold, because it will just be easier. Love story, musical. And that's going to be really annoying. Please tell me he's turning that off. Or she.
It was he was just turning it on. But he does appear to be turning the volume down.
Oh, okay.
So let's see. If he's doing that, then he's doing that deliberately, because you told him we were interviewing.
Yeah, I did. Well
we'll go
carrying on the grounds that we can move if it needs be. Yes, and I think... and I've gone and forgotten the name of it again.
You need 2 or 3 people to agree that they don't like it. So there was a show that opened only the other day, and I can't remember which one it was. Oh, it wasn't a musical, that's right, sorry. but it had one good review in the Independent and all the others decided against it, and now it's struggling, and you think, right, okay, I'll cut that bit.
Yeah, and they play on everything to do with shoes.
Who wrote it?
Brief cut while I check, because I absolutely have no idea. This is the problem with not knowing what you're going to talk about.
Yeah, but that's fine.
It
all sounds smooth on the day.
No, it's not there. Shoes the musical is not showing up.
There might be a dedicated website.
The musical. Sadler's Wells. That seems likely. press quotes, creative team. Oh, well, that's unhelpful.
If we can't find it out, we can't
Set
find it.
design, lighting design, video director. It doesn't say who it's by, which is really, really unhelpful. Here we go.